Hey everyone, welcome. I'm here with the creepiest Shadowrunner.
Hello!
Trigger!
Oh my gosh, you guys, isn't it such a surprise? You totally didn't know it was me because I was hidden in my super cool Shadowrun ninja wear.
Oh, getting a little, there we
Oh,
go.
sorry. That's my fault. That's my fault.
No worries, no worries. Um, so we had a merch giveaway on stream today, and Anjali was the lucky winner of the. It was actually a cage match that happened right after that episode was filmed.
Yeah, because I
Everyone
was
got the
fighting
hoodie.
everybody because I was so angry about me being the cleric. Like everybody else gets hot, gets hot avatars, and I show up in fucking robes. Come on.
That's usually how I am.
Someone give Trigger a break.
It's usually how I am with the bard. I'm like, I'm a bard in real life. I never want to play a bard when I'm playing.
I actually love playing bards.
Ah!
I do.
But
My dog's character is a bard.
oh,
But I guess we're not talking about D&D. We're talking about Shadowrun.
we are, and you can get your hoodie. We had so much merch to talk about today. You can get yours at store.catalystgamelabs.com. And there is even a discount where you can get 15% off your purchase at the online store with the promo code Realmsmith.
Look how much hair this hoodie can contain, you guys.
Yeah, it's a
all of it.
It's a lot
in this.
I love the pull-up piece. Like, I can't wait to get mine.
I actually was just thinking how great this would be on airplanes.
Right?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. But my hair's going away. It's driving me nuts. So yes, give them the. I'm sorry, I interrupted the code.
The code?
The code. You said that there's a discount happening.
Oh yeah, just Realmsmith on the store at store.catalystgamelabs.com. If you type in promo code Realmsmith, you get 15% off. Yay!
Yay! How cool is that? Yay!
I love that you just discovered you were the healer of the group.
Well, it's not that I didn't know I had healing capabilities. It's that I didn't realize like I was the one with the most, I guess. I didn't realize I was the cleric of the group, so to speak. I knew, and I also didn't quite understand. I admit I didn't quite understand that stat was essentially healing everywhere. So live and learn. First Shadowrun game. It's a first Shadowrun campaign, I should say.
I think everyone in chat would agree that you're doing awesome with your
well,
first.
Thank you. That's very kind. I think I know so much credit goes to our GM, Jason, because the way that he created this universe, and the way that he melded Anarchy and Sixth World, and then a little bit of home, like the way he created this made it so much more conducive for people who have never had any experience in this experience, and experience in this game,
right?
And really, the world of this game is so cool. You want to be able to jump into it right away, and I love that there's an opportunity to do so through Anarchy. I'm hoping everybody who is watching is seeing, like, I promise you, I did not read the books. I was a student, because normally I'm going to read all the books and bone up before I start. And I opened up the books and I was like, no time, got no time right now. No time, gotta go. And I wish I had read them beforehand, but I didn't need to be able to play. And especially with the people that we were playing with, who really just, everybody's together to tell a good story and have fun.
Yeah.
Well, one of the RPGs should be about.
One of the many things that I love about Shadowrun is, I've been playing for 7 years now, and it can be intimidating, not only because the rule system is known for being crunchy, but also because you've got 35 years of lore, and it's like, oh God, what if I'm behind? Yeah. And the thing that I love is that every time you come to the table, you can learn a little bit more. And I really liked in today's episode how Jason was like, the Big 10 mega corporations, like, let's
break it down.
History time.
Exactly, big old lore dump, which is so great.
Yeah.
And yes, you can get it in the books, and you should go to use your code and go buy the books because they are really actually they are very cool. And after we shot, I did start to really read them, and the reason I wished that I had read them was because they're actually very enjoyable to read, and there are fun stories in there, and the backstory is really cool and stuff. Um, uh, I lost my train of thought, so never mind.
Yeah,
The books are really fun.
the lore alone, and Jason also got to talk a little bit about some of the mega corporations and their involvement in certain things and what they do with like social media or CFD or who's behind the weapons and who's behind all these different locations and what they do, and then that there are dragons that are shapeshifters that are CEOs of corporations and stuff like that. That's pretty cool. So
It's so cool. It's so cool the amalgam of sort of a Blade Runner world and a fantasy fiction world. Like that combination is so stunning to me. Um yeah, I don't know where you can get that combo platter anywhere else.
yeah.
It's very, 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 very cool. And I like we talked a little bit about this last week. I like that because of the lore being the way it is, it does seem like this could be 100 years from now, this could be 1,000 years from now, this could be 2 years from now. We really don't know.
Yeah.
In real life, like it feels like that. Obviously, there are dates that are set in the lore, but
Right, right.
it feels very possible
Yeah.
in a not great way, but also in a great way for the game. Great way for the game, not in a great way for the world. Um, it feels very, very much like something that could happen.
Hmm.
And
Well,
that way the role playing becomes a little bit more invested.
and for our lore lovers, I'll be killed by John Helfers if I don't mention this. There is currently a humble bundle of Shadowrun Legends fiction. So, like some of the really old books that have some of the legendary characters of Shadowrun are available on Humble Bundle right now. So, pay what you want and get a ton of fiction. So
Humble
that's pretty cool.
Bundle. I want Humble Bundle to be the name of my next character. That's like Humble Bundle the gnome.
You're such a humble bundle.
Great name. Humble Bundle. Yeah, that could also be a nickname for someone who is just too humble. You're just such a humble bundle. So cute.
Awesome.
So, you guys, we had some crazy stuff happen in this episode.
Yeah, yeah. I know that you and Luis last week were chomping at the bit to talk about some of the
Yeah.
altercation at the beginning, which
Yes.
our audience noticed that tension.
So full disclosure, my loves, both Luis and I thought that happened in last week's episode. So we were like dribbling out little things of letting people know that like trust us, no friendships were harmed in the making of this episode. Um, uh, and I loved being in the chat with you guys today and and seeing the reaction to it because it is it feels oddly suited in this world in a way that it doesn't necessarily feel like it has been something that made sense in other game systems that I've played. But and this is what Luis and I wanted very much to convey last week and online and wherever, is that just because it's suited to the world doesn't mean it's suited to the players. And you really, whenever you're playing any kind of role playing game, really, really, really need to check in with each other, check in with your game master, make sure that everybody knows above board, everybody knows where their boundaries are, whatever systems you use to let people know, hey, this is the line has been crossed. Jason did a great job of that. And thankfully, Luis and I are dear friends. And we were like, what line? We don't have a line. There's no line to cross. Don't worry about it. But we even we checked in a lot before and after moments like that.
Yeah.
At the breaks, at the wherever, you and even you can see us in between scenes and stuff. We can see all of us checking in with each other, writing notes to each other. It's not all about like, hey, do you think Rio's doing this thing? Like sometimes it's taking care of each other at the table. And the only reason we're writing it down is because we're not at our home game. We're doing this game with you guys in mind. So we don't want to break the flow of things.
Yeah.
But
It's fascinating to watch. From we've all had home games, right? That have that tension that is not an appropriate way of handling player versus player, and hurt feelings can often happen at the table and stuff. So it was just so interesting to be able to watch that in a professional atmosphere where you guys were working together and checking in with each other and bouncing off each other, but in a way that for your audience was so realistic. And let's face it, there's a reason reality TV is a thing. People love drama. So to be able to see those altercations happen, but then see them handled in a way off screen that's very supportive and professional
yeah.
and stuff like that is really
Well,
cool.
and that's just it, is that because most viewers are not going to get to see those moments off screen. And I also think for all players, especially, but also game masters and dungeon masters, even though I have not essayed that role because I'm terrified to, check in with yourself. Because sometimes, and I hate to genderize things, but sometimes for women especially, sometimes the instinct is to say like, no, 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 I'm fine, everything's fine, and to diminish when something actually is upsetting or triggering or whatever. And this is a safe space to check in with yourself and be free to talk about, hey, this is a boundary, in a gentle way, in a respectful way. This is a boundary I'd really not, I don't want crossed.
And
This is a topic I don't want to talk about. This is whatever it is. I cry red flag, whatever it is. Um, I think it's important to know your own um, bottom lines.
yeah,
And sometimes you'll discover them in game too.
yeah.
Sometimes we don't even know a line has been crossed until it gets crossed, and then you're like, whoa, 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 whoa.
I don't like that.
Yeah, can we take a pause here? Because I'm actually having a thing. I'm having a reaction. And that happens, look, that happens in on film sets, that happens all over the place. That happens, actors go through that a lot. And just being honest about where you are is really important for your own, it's a game, you want to be having fun. And sometimes even the altercations are super fun, but then as soon as it switches from being fun to being something that is affecting you in a not great way, just keep checking in with yourself, check in with your, like I said, check in with everybody at the table.
Yeah.
It's always
Awesome.
good. But it sure was fun for this one.
So speaking of boundaries, some in character boundaries got crossed during this episode.
You sure
So
did.
let's talk about that altercation from the inside with player perspective. So looking back on it now and kind of rewatching it, what do you think is the essence of what happened between you two, between Trigger
Um,
and Frayne today?
I can tell you very easily, from Trigger's viewpoint. I can't necessarily obviously tell you from Frayne's, but from Trigger's point of view, this man who's like, no secrets, no secrets, no secrets, just spilled a bunch of people's personal shit. And as soon as he started talking about Liv, that was the line for me.
Mm,
Because in that previous episode, I'd sat there and watched two characters open up, and knowing what Trigger has inside her and does not or did not share at that
mhm.
moment. She values her privacy in a world where everything can be hacked. And I think of Liv as so much the like young beating heart of this crew. I feel like Rio is the bleeding heart of the crew, but she is the young, like, she could have had a very different life. She
Yeah.
very well could have had a very different life, and she ended up in this one. And Trigger, when I heard her story that night, definitely clocked that she could have escaped all of this. And I don't know if the rest of us could have, but she could have.
Hmm.
And so it was, I don't want to say a big sister, but it was more about someone else's privacy than it was necessarily about my own, and
Sure.
or Trigger's own. And um and Trigger is she has the character, she has the her style is to blow up. So it's very easy for her to come in hot and be like, hey, this is the boundary. Don't fuck it up. What's wrong with you? Blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's a little too much of a hammer.
Well,
And apparently it was this time.
and as
Although I
Frayne
still think
explained it, it was almost like, I'm yelling at you because you're yelling at me. Like,
yeah, which is so interesting because sometimes that happens in real life, right?
yeah,
Where when you're in a fight and all of a sudden someone's yelling at you and you're like, I'm just gonna yell louder because I don't know what else to do.
right.
Although I get quieter. Now. I Yeah, it was a very interesting reaction that I did not expect. I did not expect him to double down, which is why it was even more of a cool conflict. I didn't expect him to double down and be like, yeah, I told him all your private stuff. What's the problem? And yeah, I mean, I'm still, there's a lot to unpack there that I can't unpack without giving away stuff later.
Sure.
But this thread continues.
Yeah. And I do have to say
Not even
there's
this
one,
thread, not even this thread, but this dynamic.
yes. And the one funny part of the fight that I always think about and have to bring up is that you are on him about privacy
And I just hacked into his
while
call.
you're reading the privacy of his call.
Believe me, I know. And I was amazed that no one brought that up, including me. And I was prepared for it. Because I mean, I was very prepared for him to be like, what do you mean you hacked into my call? I'm like, well, we got no secrets, right? So why shouldn't I hack into your call? You know, I'm not allowed to have secrets from you. So what's the problem?
Oh man, I really want to
That's where
watch
the
that.
whole thing was. This whole sense of like, don't hide things from me. You're not my family. Like that whole conversation in the previous episode really kind of like did kind of a number on me because the concept of you can't have secrets from me, but you're not my family. Trust
Mm-hmm.
is earned.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to tell you my secrets until I trust you.
Yeah, and you're all in a situation where it's like you're being hunted.
Any one of us could also be the person who caused it.
It's true.
Any one of us or any one of the people that we have already met and put our lives in their hands could absolutely be the reason it's happening.
And that's part of what I love about Shadowrun versus like D&D, where it's like we're a party now and we're gonna go dungeon crawling for treasure.
Right?
It's so pure and innocent. And this has so much level of complexity because you are all criminals. You are all running from pasts and afraid of various things. You're in a dystopian.
Have that dynamic. You could totally have that dynamic in other game systems. It's just so built into this.
It is. Yeah.
And this world is conducive to that in a way that other games I don't feel like necessarily are.
Right, right. Interesting. All right, so that happened in this episode.
Rio solidified his position as the like the voice of reason in this group.
The dad.
The dad. I am the dad with the dad. And I actually was very happy for that to start happening because I know I very much didn't want to be the leader, and we talked about this that at the SDCC, the session 0, if you guys saw it, at the session 0, it felt very much like she was being put in that position. And session 1, he was calling me boss, and nobody needs Trigger in charge.
I did
do things as if she's in charge, but ain't nobody needs to be put in Trigger in charge.
Knowing that after you talked about it was fantastic because going back and watching the SDCC session 0, there's the moment where Frayne says, I know a leader when I see one, referring to Trigger, and your face was like,
yeah, no, I was like, are you seriously? Like, no, you don't. You really. And again, that thread comes back later,
Yeah.
into the reasons for that, into the reasons for her
So good.
not well, there's all the reasons for that period. We'll just say that.
So
Go ahead.
one of the things we were talking about before we went live with the post show was at the end of the episode when you and Liv go into the Matrix and are peeking around for Bitbucket or for the wizard or whatever this is, and realize you can't get out.
We can't get out. We
And
didn't
like
know
the
that.
fear in like you can feel just like you could feel that antagonistic tension between you and Frame, you could feel that like all of a sudden the stakes just rose.
Yeah,
And
well, and
you're
also I think part of that came from the fact that we don't know the game that well, and we didn't understand that that's a possibility, and we didn't know so much about jacking in and out and like how you can get screwed up if you get pulled out of the matrix physically, like manually, and all of that. Like we sort of didn't get that. We made a whole plan where we could be able to talk to the guys. We go to the matrix and we could talk to them and all this stuff. And oops, not an option.
yep.
And of course, Trigger is just going to be like, okay, well, we're stuck here. Let's go. But Anjali was like, okay, well, we're throwing out 10 pages of notes I just took. Let's figure out what we're going to do now. Let me see. Cadillac Jack said something. The Matrix had a similar appeal to Cypher betraying the team specifically. Like, yeah, there's so many things about this world that may have been spoken about in different properties, and it still always feels new.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that because ultimately, in every storytelling opportunity that you have, there are certain things that betrayal, love, desire for family, all like there are so many things that just go across all stories.
Yep.
But yeah, that fear. Oops.
Now, what was it like for Trigger? We kind of talked about this at the very beginning, but with your feelings, but for Trigger, seeing the embodiment of all of these new friends and how they're represented in the Matrix in these archetypes that we know so
Yeah, it's a
well.
good question how it was for Trigger. Because I feel like Trigger and Anjali had somewhat the same reactions, because Anjali was much more overt about it. The reaction of like, are you fucking kidding me that this is what I get and this is what you guys get? That I think was more Trigger's thing, because she's been in these rooms before. She knows, like, she's been doing this since she was God knows how old. Like this is not new to her. But of all the, just like Anjali does not see her this way, I don't think Trigger sees herself as the healer. That is, she's the hacker, not the healer.
Yeah.
And that form of uselessness, she also has no like, she doesn't have a whole lot of like nurturing instinct to her like most clerics would. So I think there's a lot of like, how come you get the cool stuff? I want cool stuff. This isn't real life. I want cool stuff. I think that for Trigger too, and also just feeling like I'm useless. I need to be useful, and I'm useless. All I have are robes. Like, really?
I think it's interesting though, like what you just said about like she doesn't think of herself as the healer. But like in game and remembering back to the game as well, whenever someone was hurt, you were the first one that was like, can I do biotech?
I was the first person to run to Rio for the first years. Because I could see he was in trouble and he had saved my ass. The very first in session 0, he saved my life. And so that's where I feel like that connection was solidified.
Cool.
And I don't want to ruin the moment for those of you who haven't seen session 0, because there's a very cool, you actually get to see the moment when they're framed and what happened. Even that game, yeah, it talk about a moment of like the rug getting pulled out from under you. There was a big moment there. Yeah. And he almost seemed, Christian is just so brilliant. It almost seemed like he had pre-planned it, because there is a moment he does something where he saves my life and then he refers back to something he did like 45 minutes ago. And couldn't have known that was coming. Or
Yeah.
maybe he did know something like that was coming and he had it in his back pocket. But that for yeah, that
Yeah.
for Trigger is where she jumps. And then as she discovers that she has, she knows she has the ability of, I think she forgets, because Anjali sure forgets. But yeah, being useful is something.
Awesome. Awesome. Keeping that in mind for future episodes. I want to open it up for the last few minutes here to the chat. If you have any
Yeah,
questions about the
guys,
series,
please
Trigger, Anjali.
ask any questions you've got. I'm interested in knowing what are like in this episode, what struck you the most because you were there watching live. Are there things besides what we've talked about that you really took home with you?
Um, for me, it was something that I didn't even physically realize until I was already doing it. At the studio where, I'm sitting back there and I'm kind of doing work, but listening. And then I could feel the tension in the room change whenever there was an altercation or whenever there was fear or high stakes. And before I knew it, I'd be standing right behind the tech area, just watching so I could be as close to you guys as I could to watch these moments happening. And it like just drew me forward. I didn't even realize I was standing until I was there.
I love it.
There were a couple times I almost walked into frame behind Jason because I'm like, I need to get closer to this.
That is funny. That is funny. I love that.
Yeah, I think that for me, for this episode, it was those last episode 3 was when we really started getting into those character interactions, and I really loved that. But I think this was the first episode I think I cried for when I'm like, yes, they're bringing it to life. It's what it's supposed to be.
I will say the appearance of like all of a sudden there's some fucking wizard like that, because I keep forgetting in the Shadowrun world that there is that fantasy element, and that dragons do exist and magic does exist. So for that to be the world that we have to go into while we're in this world, that definitely threw me for a loop. I was not prepared for that to be like, I genuinely thought the wizard was just going to be like some dude sitting in a room or sitting at a bar or whatever. I didn't think we were going to have to go play his fantasy.
I mean, shout out to Jason for that with his planning, because to be like, all right, how are we going to get Shadowrun to a streaming audience and stuff like that who loves fantasy and loves D&D, and so like the fan service for that, but also bringing it in a way that's so cyberpunk as well.
That makes such sense.
Yeah,
it makes so much sense. And I hope Liv did too, because I feel like she's just so game, no pun intended. She's just so game to go along with stuff. I loved the getting to enjoy the fish out of water quality of like, I don't know how to play this game, wizard. I'm just going to talk to you and see if this works.
Yep.
We don't know what we're doing. Can someone please tell us what to do? Which is kind of what Anjali was feeling. My favorite thing about Trigger is that I don't have to filter anything.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I wanted to play a character like that. Very much filter anything.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, Jason he's I'm blown away by what he did with this series. I really, really am. I am going to make a shameless plug to all of you that please use the link, the Realmsmith link, to go and look at all the good stuff on the Catalyst site, because we want a season 2. And that happens if y'all go look at stuff.
Yep.
I very much, what class would I have chosen for Trigger? She would have been a thief. Make her a thief, although she's not really stealthy, I guess.
Excuse me. That came up surprisingly fast.
Yeah, she's not very stealthy, I guess, so maybe not the best for her. But I feel like that's totally what she thinks she is. She thinks of herself as.
Awesome.
What class? Yeah, what class?
Turbo Turtle has a question. Does playing RPG games help your acting?
Absolutely. 100%. You get a benefit when playing TTRPGs that rarely, I can't even, I don't remember the last time that I got to do this in a play or on camera or any other. I mean, on camera and like television and film, not this kind of on camera, um, or voiceover. You get the joy of full immersion. You get the joy of, short of a LARP. You get the joy of actually being able to embody this character and make decisions for them and write their lines and say the things that you feel that they would say.
Yeah.
The closest thing that I've ever gotten to doing that are exercises in an acting class when you are building the character before you then go perform the scene.
Right.
So you are thinking to yourself, okay, what would this character's background be? If this character was making coffee, what would their physicality be? All that kind of stuff you do in acting class, or maybe did in acting class, that after a while maybe, if you're me, you stop doing because it just comes a little more second nature now.
Right.
But when you miss that step, you don't get to really inhabit the character the way you want to.
Yeah.
And it's just a level of collaboration and a level of involvement and a sense of agency that you have in the storytelling that is very, very, very satisfying. And what I have found is that it has reminded me, how do I put this? For many, many years as an actor, say I had to cry in a scene. Well, for many, many years as an actor, I couldn't do it. I couldn't access those emotions because I was a little afraid of them, and I was afraid if I start crying, I won't be able to stop, and I don't want to like lose my mind or whatever. I don't know what I was afraid of. I was afraid of because I was depressed or whatever it was. But when I realized that you can have those feelings and move through them in life, just let them come and let them go. You don't have to ignore them. You can just move through them. When I recognized that, all of a sudden more notes, I could play more notes on this instrument. In RPGs, you get to experience that over and over and over and over again because natural emotion rides up in a way from what you are doing and the story that you are telling and the investment in the story in a way that is not there on a page when the lines are written for you. You have to bring to it. In this, you don't have to bring anything but your true, honest, open self, being ready to play. And sometimes playing means being open to feel a little bit of pain that you will move through during the game. And your other players, again, talking about the safe space, your other players are there to support you. It is an ideal, I feel like it is the ideal way you would want a movie set or a play or a film set or anything, I mean, a TV set or anything to be,
I
is
agree.
that level of openness and
Yeah.
collaboration.
My degree, to answer Turbo Turtle, my degree is in theater, film acting, and voice. I created my own major in college, and then I lived in Chicago. I was a working actor for a little bit, and I actually getting into Shadowrun. I love D&D, but getting into Shadowrun, one of the writers was in our D&D game, and when that campaign ended, he was like, "Hey, I'd like to run this game for you that I write for. It's cyberpunk fantasy," and I'm like, "That sounds stupid." Uh,
Ah,
and I'm a big hypocrite. That's fine.
no,
So,
you learned and you
eh,
were open to change.
well, everyone, I wasn't actually, but my group was like, "Be nice."
Oh my God, I'm
So
hilarious. I'm
I
trying to give
was
you a bone here.
I was in a play at the time, and when the play ended, I was like, I guess I'll care about this. So I hadn't created my character. I didn't know how to do any of the roles. I was just like, how many dice? Okay, fine. Okay, that's a lot of dice, and it's fun. That's fine. But finally, I was like, I guess I'll start caring. And as I started learning more about the world and the setting and the story he was telling and these characters, I fell in love with it. And in terms of like the helping the acting, like being able to move through um and react to things in the moment without it, as you said, being written for you, it allows you to embrace the character more fully, and embrace the emotions more fully rather than looking for clues within the script where it's like, well, why do they react this way?
Exactly. You don't have to plan it. You don't have to map it out. In fact, you can't map it out.
Yeah.
Um, I have played with people who are preparing things that they want to say, or, you know, like things like that. And it never works out the way you want it to,
Yeah.
or they want it to.
Well, and it's
It is a lesson in trusting yourself, which actors notoriously don't do. We get in our own ways and we try to plan everything. And
trusting each other too, because your partner in a
you're absolutely
scene.
trusting each other. But I think that we've talked so much about the trusting each other.
Yeah.
But you know, there's a part of actors who also like to we doubt ourselves, we second guess ourselves, we do all of that stuff. Luis and I always debrief after games and stuff where we talk about where do we second guess our choices, all of that. And we keep saying, like, that's the actor side of me. That's the actor side of me.
Yeah.
And being able to exercise that muscle that says, no matter what happens, it's right for the story.
Right.
No matter what happens. That muscle is so necessary as an actor on camera when you're reacting to real things, and on stage when you're reacting to real things in the moment, and trusting that that is still good.
And the improv element of yes anding, it gives you such good practice for that, to be able to, you know, you might, even within the realm of an RPG, you know, it's there's certain rules that you can or can't follow, and things like that. But at a certain point too, like there's times in even this series where someone asks a question like, do this for me, and the answer is like, well, there's reasons that can't happen or whatever, and then like the actor goes, no, do this. I saw that with Frenchie a little bit when Rio was like, that's not how you treat your friends, and he's like, great, I've wet my pants and I am ready to embrace what you just said. Like,
thank you. I want to point out, I want to go backtrack a little bit because Jason said something here in the chat, and I'm not sure if people watch this later that they will read the chat. So he said, behind the screen insight, I chose cleric because Trigger is beholden to a higher power, the Matrix, and has a reluctant sage healer calling. Her power comes from harnessing an unseen force that she has a direct connection to. Well, look at you, you evil genius. Had I only known that, I would have given in to it. Not true. I just wanted Trigger to look hot. No, I'm just kidding. But that makes such good sense too, because so much of what she is not what she wants to be. And we've already heard her say very similar things to that, so that's not a spoiler. Thomas, you're absolutely right. I would not have. She definitely would not work for a paladin because she is not lawful good in any way, shape, or form. That is not her thing. Oh goodness, it's already 8.
It is. So we're gonna have to wrap up here. So anything else you want to say about tonight's episode, about the series, about what's
watch it and use the link to go to Catalyst Game Labs and look at things so that we can have season 2. That's what I want to say about it. But also, again, please, 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 I know we've said this a lot, but take care of yourselves and each other at the table, because it's not fun if something hurts. And I know that sounds like so obvious, but the more you can give into a story, the more fun it can be. You can't give into a story when it's not a safe space.
And we have more goodness in this. We're just halfway through the campaign. We have 8 episodes. This was episode 4. There's more drama, more intrigue, more mystery, more reveals.
Before the stream here, both of us were like, ooh, is the next episode when this? Oh, wow. And is that episode when this? Wait, which episode is it when that happens? So there's a lot of fun stuff.
Yep. So don't miss. We'll be right back on Realmsmith's YouTube channel next week. And Jason and I were texting behind the scenes tonight, and he's going to be appearing on the commentary next week as well. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, now that we're halfway through, how are we feeling? How's it going? So tune in next week.
I hope you're feeling like $1 gazillion because you're killing it.
Yes, you are. And thank you for everything. I think I've said thank you more in the past 2 months than I have in my entire life. But tune in. And in the meantime, head on over to store.catalystgamelabs.com. Use the promo code Realmsmith15. I said that wrong at the beginning of the stream. So it's Realmsmith15 to get your 15% off, and show Catalyst that this series is turning into
making you buy sweatshirts.
sweatshirts and game books and letting you experience the world of Shadowrun yourselves.
You too can be a you can be a hoodie ninja.
That's how you get more of this. So tune in. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Anjali. Thank you all for joining. And until next time, stay safe in the shadows.